My stepmother thinks she owns the house I inherited from my late mom and decided to set her own rules in it. So I kicked her and her kids out, but my dad left with them. Now they are demanding to share my property. I'm Samuel, a 21-year-old college student, and I live in our beautiful family estate. Well, technically my estate now. My mother left it to me when she passed away 3 years ago from a sudden cardiac arrest. I was only 18 then, just starting college, when we got that devastating call. 1 minute mom was fine, the next, she was gone. It still hurts to think about it. The house is gorgeous. It's the kind of place that makes people stop and stare when they drive by. 2 stories of elegant architecture, perfectly manicured lawns, and a kitchen that would make any chef jealous. I live here with my dad who's 48. Mom made sure he'd be taken care of too, leaving him a monthly allowance of $3,000 for life. He surprised me with how calmly he accepted everything. No arguments, no complaints about me getting the house. He just smiled and said Mom knew what she was doing. That's one of the things I've always loved about my dad, his ability to handle difficult situations with grace. We settled into a comfortable routine after Mom's passing. Dad and I became even closer, if that was possible. He'd cook my favorite breakfast every morning. We'd talk about my classes, share stories about our days.
Wait, these guys,
everything was good.
So money feeds these guys?
At least I thought it was. That's why what happened a few months ago hit me like a ton of bricks. I came home from my afternoon classes to find Dad standing in our foyer with a woman I'd never seen before and 2 girls. Samuel, son, Dad said, his voice unnaturally high. I'd like you to meet Jane, my wife. I stood there frozen. Wife?
Bro!
I must have looked like a fish out of water, opening and closing my mouth without any words coming out. We got married yesterday, he continued, as if he was telling me he'd bought new curtains. Jane was younger than Dad. I'd later learned she was 6 years younger, and her 2 daughters aged 12 and 14 stood behind her. But what really got to me wasn't just the shock of Dad remarrying. It was the fact that he hadn't told me he was even dating someone. No hints, no conversations, nothing. Just surprise, here's your new stepmother and stepsisters. I watched in stunned silence as Jane walked around our house, my house, inspecting everything like she was a potential buyer at an open house. She ran her hands along the mahogany banisters, peered into every room, and nodded approvingly at the high ceilings. This is even better than the pictures, she said, grinning. We're going to enjoy living here. Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl, but I pushed the feeling aside. After all, when we sat down to talk that first day, Jane seemed okay. Not exactly warm, but not terrible either. She asked about my studies, made a few jokes that weren't completely awful, and managed to keep her daughters quiet for at least an hour. This could work. I remember thinking to myself, maybe we could actually get along. That illusion of potential harmony lasted exactly 2 days. Then all hell broke loose. Give it back. It's my turn. Jessica, the 12-year-old screamed at the top of her lungs. No way. I just started. Her 14-year-old sister, Mary, shouted back. And there they went again, wrestling over my laptop like it was the last piece of technology on Earth. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was my new daily reality. These girls fought over everything. The TV remote, the last cookie, who got to sit in which chair, even who got to use the bathroom first in the morning. One particularly memorable afternoon, I was trying to study for a crucial law exam. The chapter on constitutional rights required complete concentration, and I had just gotten into a good rhythm when crash. The door to my room flew open, and in tumbled Jessica and Mary, a tangled mess of flying fists and accusations. Get out! I yelled, jumping up from my desk. This is my room. She took the controller when I was winning, Jessica whined. You weren't even playing right, Mary shot back. They continued their brawl, knocking over my carefully organized study materials. My constitutional law textbook hit the floor with a thud, pages bending under its own weight. Mom, I heard Mary yell, Jessica's cheating again. Jane sauntered up to my doorway, leaning against the frame with that infuriating smirk of hers. Come on, Samuel. They're just figuring things out. This is how young ladies learn to handle conflict. By destroying my room and interrupting my studies? I asked incredulously. Dad appeared behind her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Jane's right, son. The girls are just being girls. They need to learn to work out their differences. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Every day, it was the same thing. Constant fighting, screaming, things getting broken. And apparently, this was all perfectly fine with their mother and, increasingly, with my father. But Jane wasn't done making changes.
Not very good.
One evening, she gathered everyone in the living room for what she called a family meeting. She stood in the center of the room, hands on her hips, surveying the space like a general planning a battle. This house needs some serious work, she announced. Everything's too masculine. We need to renovate.
What?
New furniture, new color scheme. The works.
It's
I sat up straighter.
time.
Excuse me? Look at all this. She gestured around. The dark colors, the leather furniture. It's like living in a man cave.
Crazy.
We need something more feminine, more befitting a proper family home. This is my house, I said firmly, feeling my blood pressure rise. Mom left it to me, not to Dad, and definitely not to you. I'll decide if anything needs to be changed. Jane's face darkened. Listen, Samuel, ownership is just a technicality. What matters is who lives here and who's the head of the family. And as the woman of the house, I stood up from the couch. Let me make something very clear. You don't command anything in this house. You live here because you're my father's wife, and your daughters are here only because I allow it. The change in Jane's face was instant, like a mask dropping away. Her eyes narrowed, and that fake pleasant smile disappeared completely. In 3 quick strides, she was standing right in front of me, using her height to try to intimidate me. Listen here, you spoiled little prince. She snarled, her voice dropping to a dangerous growl. I won't have some college kid telling me what I can and can't do in my own home. It's not your home.
Well, that sucks.
I repeated, standing my ground even as my heart raced. And it never will be. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Jane's face turned an alarming shade of red, and she raised her hand, taking a swing toward me. The movement was so sudden that Dad gasped from across the room.
50 health?
But I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up, my finger hovering over the emergency call button. Go ahead, I said, my voice ice cold. Give me a reason to call the police. I'm sure they'd be very interested in hearing about a woman threatening her stepson in his own home. The threat worked like a bucket of cold water. Jane's hand dropped immediately, and without another word, she turned and stormed up the stairs, leaving Dad and me alone in the living room. Samuel, son, Dad rushed forward, his voice trembling. There's no need for things to get so heated. Jane is just trying to adjust to our family dynamic. She needs time to get used to everything. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was he seriously defending her after what just happened? She needs to feel like a real woman. Dad continued, wringing his hands. Like the head of the house. You know how important that is for women, son. Please try to understand. I looked at my father's pleading face, trying to recognize the strong, sensible man who had raised me. The whole situation was surreal.
Shit.
My father, who had always been so level-headed, was now standing here making excuses for a woman who had just tried to hit me.
Goodbye.
Something inside me snapped. I was done trying to be diplomatic.
Only one hit, by
You want
the
to know
way.
what I think? I raised my voice deliberately,
Piccolo
making sure my words
concierge,
would carry
what the
upstairs.
fuck?
When she earns enough money to buy her own house, she can make whatever
that's
rules she
actually
wants
not
there.
bad.
But this I gestured around at the home my mother had left me. This isn't her house to command.
20.
The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from upstairs, we heard light footsteps followed by a violent
Plus
bang.
20
The sound of
damage.
Jane slamming the bedroom door was so forceful it made the chandelier in the living room shake. After the confrontation with Jane,
I feel like
things
this
in the
is
house
better than
changed,
this,
but not in the
like,
dramatic way I'd expected.
I don't
It started
know.
with breakfast. For as
The-
long as I
the
could
boots are
remember,
clearly
mornings had been our
worse, but
special
the problem
time.
is,
Dad would be in the kitchen by 7,
I don't
humming
know,
softly while he worked his magic at the
it's
stove.
really, I
The
need
smell
a
of freshly
melee
brewed
weapon.
coffee and whatever delicious creation he was
but these
making
are
would drift
so
up to my
much
room,
worse.
better than any alarm clock.
Let's
But
see
now,
this real quick.
now the kitchen was silent in the mornings. The first time it happened, I thought maybe Dad had slept in. I came
Also,
downstairs
these
in my
guys go.
usual morning days, expecting to smell coffee and breakfast, only to
I
find
mean,
an
I
empty
feel like
kitchen.
these were good.
The stove
but,
was
like,
cold,
They're not
the
going to
coffee
carry
maker
me. That's
amused.
the problem.
Through the dining room window, I could see Dad in the garden, having coffee with Jane. I made myself some toast and tried not to think too much of it. Everyone's entitled to a morning off.
This
right?
is kind of a weird
But it happened again the next day. And the next.
But I feel like this is
Soon,
just too weak.
a week had passed, and the only sounds
As
in the
much
morning
as
kitchen
cool
were
as
the
it
ones
is
I
and
made
as much as
myself,
it has
fumbling
helped
around
me,
for cereal or bread.
it's
One
just
morning,
not gonna
I
get the
finally
job
worked up
done
the courage
in
to
the
ask
long
about
run.
it. I found Dad in the living room,
So we're 2
reading a
hours
magazine
in,
while Jane's
but-
girls argued over some video game in the background. Dad, I started hesitantly, is everything okay?
No, qué brutos.
You haven't been cooking breakfast lately. He looked up from his magazine, and for a moment, I saw something flicker
Genial.
across his
Son
face.
todas malas.
Regret?
Genial.
Maybe? But it was quickly replaced by a cool detachment I'd never seen before. Samuel,
Gracias.
you're 21 now,
Pero es por
he
voto,
said,
así
his
que
voice
creo que
matter of
gana el
fact.
que más vota.
You're an adult and perfectly
Algo así.
capable of making your own breakfast.
Pasé de nivel,
Besides, he
finalmente.
gestured around, this is your house, remember? You're the man of the house now, so you should learn to take care of yourself. The words hit me like a slap.
Votación.
But I swallowed the hurt and nodded,
soy pobre.
not wanting to start another argument. The tension in the house was already thick enough to cut with a knife. I turned and walked away,
Genial.
pretending I didn't see Jane smirk from where she sat in Mom's old armchair. As the days went by, I noticed other changes too. Dad's monthly
Ahora,
allowance,
soy pobre.
the money Mom had
Eso
left to
seguro.
ensure he'd always be
Y no puedo
comfortable,
tragar acá
seemed to
tampoco.
be disappearing
Abrí.
faster than ever. I started seeing
son
shopping
gratis
bags from
también.
expensive stores appearing in the foyer. Jane
Genial.
had developed a sudden taste for fine dining, and every other night, they'd dress up and head out to the fanciest restaurants in town. We're trying
Genial.
that new French place
Como cada
downtown,
golpe
Dad
consecutivo.
would announce, pulling on his coat while Jane waited by the door.
60%
Don't wait up.
de daño infligido
I knew
durante
these
este segundo
restaurants,
tendrá
the kind where appetizers cost more than a
después de
week's
que te
worth of
hieran,
groceries,
no, ese
and
no.
every time
Yo
they
ya-
went out, it was Dad reaching for his wallet when the bill
Soy
came.
pobre.
My mother's money, carefully set aside to take care of him,
Y acá
was
debo
now
elegir
funding
otra cosa,
romantic
me
dinners
imagino.
with a woman who had tried to hit her stepson just weeks ago. The fancy restaurant dates weren't enough, apparently.
No tengo
Soon,
pollito.
Dad and
aviso.
Jane started taking weekend trips together. It started with
pasé el
romantic
nivel 2 y no
getaways
tengo
to
una
nearby
mierda,
bed
¿no?
and breakfasts, then
Básicamente.
evolved into longer excursions to beach resorts and mountain lodges. But their latest travel plan really took the cake. Samuel, we need to talk,
Exacto.
Dad said one evening, catching me as I was heading up to my room to study.
Me encanta.
His voice had that fake sweet tone he'd started
Ninguna
using
opción era
whenever he
buena,
wanted something
igual.
from me. Jane and I are planning a romantic getaway next week. Just a few days.
Contalo.
And we need you to watch the girls while we're gone.
Es buenísimo.
I actually laughed out loud thinking he was joking. But when I saw his serious expression, my laughter died in my throat.
En su
Absolutely
defensa
not,
no había
I
ninguna
said
opción
firmly.
buena.
Have you seen how they behave? They're like wild animals. Right on cue, a crash echoed
mierda.
from upstairs followed by screaming. Dad
Pensé que-
winced but pressed on. They're just active girls. Active? I cut him off. They're dangerous.
¿Y este
They
qué
could literally
mierda?
kill each other, and I'm not
¿Por
going
qué
to be
pegan tan duro?
responsible for that. What if one of them cracks the other's skull open during one of their fights?
Auxilio. Sí,
What
la
if they
gaté.
break bones?
¿Por qué me
No
sigue?
way, Dad. Please,
Me
Samuel.
cago, pero no
He
me-
begged, grabbing my hand. Jane and I really need this
Yo sé
time
quién era.
together. We've been planning this trip for weeks. I pulled my hand away.
Sí, correcto.
Then take them with you. Or better yet, leave them with Jane's father. He only lives 15 minutes away. Oh, he's too old to handle them,
todavía no
Dad
puedes
said
poner
quickly.
eso.
And I'm too young,
Ahora sí.
I shot back.
Ahora sí puedo poner
Besides, I have plans that week. I have a study group, assignments due.
Ahora
The
pueden-
argument went on for another
¿Pueden?
hour, with
Sí,
Dad
ahora sí.
alternating between guilt trips and promises that the girls would behave.
Sí.
But I stood my ground. In the end, they had no choice
Y
but to
volví al
take Jessica
principio.
and Mary
Genial.
with them. The morning they left, you'd think someone had
Otra
died
vez
from the
la
looks on
arquita de
their
mierda.
faces. Jane stomped
¿Y dónde está
around
el
loading
roguelike
suitcases
acá?
into the car, scowling like I'd personally
Arranqué
ruined her
igual que hoy.
life. Dad barely said goodbye, just gave me a
Siempre
disappointed look
arranco de
that was
cero.
supposed to make me feel guilty. The house felt wonderfully peaceful after they left, but their sour attitudes had become the new normal. Every day, it was the same thing. Jane and Dad walking around with faces like thunder, sighing heavily and exchanging meaningful looks whenever I
Soy
entered a
buenísimo.
room.
Por eso.
It was like
no
they
te
were
diste cuenta de
competing
lo
in some
rápido y
sort of
bueno que
most
soy.
miserable person contest. Meanwhile, the girls continued their daily
Granada de
warfare.
fuego.
Just yesterday, they'd had a full-on brawl over who got to use the TV first, complete with pushing, shoving, and enough screaming to wake the dead. And Dad? He barely even looked up from his phone. As if the constant fighting wasn't bad enough, my stepsisters developed a new hobby, helping themselves to my belongings whenever I was at college. It started small. My wireless mouse disappeared one day, then my portable speaker the next. But soon they graduated to bigger targets. I came home from classes one afternoon to find my tablet missing from my desk. When I confronted Mary and Jessica, they both shrugged, putting on their best innocent faces. Haven't seen it, Mary said, not even looking
La
up from
célula la
her
gasté
phone.
en más salud,
No.
pero
No idea. Jessica echoed, suddenly very interested in her shoelaces. This went on for 3 days.
un adelantado
3
en su
days of
época.
them playing dumb while I just knew, one of them had taken it.
Ok, acá votan.
Finally, I'd had enough.
No, sí, ahí votan.
While Mary was at soccer practice, I marched into her room. The place was a disaster zone, clothes everywhere, candy wrappers stuffed between books, posters hanging crooked on the walls. I started searching, methodically going through drawers and boxes, under the bed, in the closet. And there it was, wrapped in one of her sweatshirts and stuffed in the back of her bottom drawer, my tablet. The battery was nearly
pobre.
dead, and she'd
Siento-
filled it with game apps and who knows what else.
Sí, sí.
When she got
Sí, sí.
home, the look on her face when she saw me holding the tablet was priceless. I was going to give it back, she
No,
mumbled.
soy pobre.
Like hell you were. I snapped.
Como aumento
Stay
de
out of my
brutalidad.
room and stay
Ah,
away
sí,
from
sí,
my
sí,
things.
cierto, es bueno, es bueno.
But they didn't learn. A week later, I came home to find them both sprawled on the living room floor, my laptop between them, playing some game they'd downloaded. I snatched the laptop away, ignoring their protests. If I catch either of you touching my things again. Then came the final straw. I was walking home from campus one sunny afternoon when I saw them, a man I'd never met before, standing with Jane next to my mother's prized car, which had been pulled out of the garage.
Es verdad.
The car she'd loved so
Puedo
much,
ponerle
the
uno
one
de
she'd
dos
spent
ya.
weekends washing and waxing, teaching me about engines and oil changes
Suena
and
bien.
proper maintenance.
Buena
My
idea.
stomach dropped as I got closer and heard
Debería
their
serte
conversation.
moderador algún día.
Excellent condition,
Se me acordó.
the man was saying walking around the car. I think it would be perfect for my commute.
No,
What's
que me
going
muero
on
de un
here?
golpe. No, que
I
me muero de un
asked,
golpe.
my
No, me
voice
muero de un
sharper
golpe.
than I'd intended. The man turned to me with a bright smile. Oh, hello.
Ok,
I'm here about
ok,
the car.
Facilito.
She listed it for sale online. I felt like someone had dumped ice water down my back. This car isn't for sale, I said firmly. It belonged to my mother. Jane's face twisted
Te queda
into an
uno.
ugly sneer. You should be thanking me, she spat.
Que no me
I
tiene que
actually
matar.
found someone willing to buy this piece of junk. It's a man's car anyway. No
Facilito.
self-respecting woman would be caught dead driving it. I stood there frozen as she continued her rant. Your mother, she practically spat the word, clearly
Puedo
didn't know
hacerlo
anything
ahora,
about
ya,
cars. Driving around in this thing like some sort of, she waved her hand dismissively. No wonder she acted like a man. A real
Mierda.
woman would have bought a proper car. I
Bueno,
turned to the man, who
le
was
quiero
still
sin
hovering
querer.
uncertainly near the car. I'm sorry, but you've been misled. This car is not for sale. It never was, and it never will be. My voice was calm but firm. I suggest you look elsewhere. He glanced between Jane and me, clearly sensing the tension, then nodded and hurried away. I didn't wait to watch him leave. Instead, I got into my mother's car, backed it carefully into the garage and locked the door. Then I turned to Jane, who was practically vibrating with rage. "Give me the garage keys. Now." My voice was steel. "And don't ever go near my mother's car again." Her face contorted with fury as she yanked the keys from her pocket and threw them at my feet. They clattered against the driveway as she stormed off, cursing under her breath. That evening, Dad cornered me in the kitchen. "How dare you speak to Jane that way?" he hissed. "Do you have any idea what kind of problems you're making for yourself?" I slammed my glass down on the counter. "Problems? You want to talk about problems? How about her trying to sell Mom's car behind my back? How about her insulting Mom's memory? She was just trying to help. That car is just sitting there. That car, I cut him off, is mine. Just like this house is mine. And I've had enough. Jane and her daughters need to leave. I'm done with the fighting, the stealing, the disrespect. I'm done with all of it." Your dad's voice rose to a shriek. "You're kicking us out? Your own father?" "No, Dad. Not you." I took a deep breath. "You can stay. You're my father and this was your home too. But Jane and the girls need to go." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Then his face hardened. "If they go, I go." The words hit like physical blows, but I stood my ground. "That's your choice." They were gone by the next afternoon. I watched from my window as they loaded boxes and suitcases into their cars. Dad didn't even say goodbye. After they left, I sat in Mom's study, surrounded by her books and photos, trying to process everything that had happened. But one thought kept nagging at me: this wasn't over. Jane wasn't the type to walk away quietly. I needed help. Professional help. The next morning, I called Mom's old friend and lawyer, Jennifer Wilson. She handled Mom's will and had always told me to contact her if I ever needed anything. "This is serious, Samuel," she said after I explained everything. "Your father has no legal claim to the property. Your mother's will was very clear about that.
Okay, this fire thing
But if he
is
decides
honestly
to file a
kinda
lawsuit,
sick. It's been
he
saving
wouldn't."
my life.
I started, but then stopped. These days, I wasn't sure what Dad would do. Legal battles are expensive. Jennifer continued. "Even if we win, and we would win, you'd spend a lot of money and time fighting this in court. Not to mention the emotional toll."
I'm not really taking
She
advantage
leaned back in her chair. "My advice?
Condition.
Try to resolve this before it gets to that point." Jennifer's prediction proved right sooner than I expected. 2 days after our meeting, my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. "I'm filing a lawsuit," he said without preamble. "For division of property. You can't just throw us out on the street." I contacted Jennifer immediately after hanging up. "Let's try mediation," she suggested. "Get everyone in a room with a neutral third party. It'll be cheaper and faster than court." The mediation was set for the following week. I arrived early with Jennifer, watching as Dad walked in with his lawyer and Jane. Of course, she couldn't stay away. Jennifer took control of the meeting immediately. "Let's be clear about what we're dealing with here." She began spreading out documents on the conference table. Mrs. Parker's will was ironclad.
Good luck charm, I guess.
She had it drawn up by one of the best estate lawyers in the state, me. She walked them through the legal details, her voice calm but authoritative.
Alrighty.
The house, the car, everything was left to Samuel. "Mr. Parker, you received a generous monthly allowance, which you're still getting. There's nothing here to dispute." Dad's lawyer shifted uncomfortably in her chair as Jennifer continued. "A lawsuit would be expensive, very expensive. Samuel has the resources to fight this as long as necessary. Do you?"
Alrighty.
She looked directly at my father. "Are you prepared to drain your savings, possibly go into debt, for a case you can't win?" Jane jumped up. "Of course, he wants to continue. We're not going to let some spoiled brat." "Mrs. Stevens," Jennifer cut her off sharply. "You're not a party to this discussion. I'm asking Mr. Parker. In fact, I think it would be better if you waited outside." Jane's face turned that familiar shade of red. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the blinds rattled. In the silence that followed, I watched my father. He looked smaller somehow, older. The fight seemed to drain out of him. "The monthly allowance continues for life," Jennifer reminded him gently. "That's $3,000 every month guaranteed, but legal fees could eat that up for years to come. Is that what you want?" Dad looked down at his hands, then at his lawyer, who gave a slight shake of her head. "No," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, I don't want that." The paperwork was ready, a document acknowledging the terms of the will and waiving any future claims. Dad signed it without looking at me. Before he left, I handed him an envelope. "This should cover 6 months of rent," I said, "to help you get settled." He took it without a word.
Yeah, I can't really
That
go
was
there
3 months
anymore
ago.
'cause I made
The
my
house is
choice,
quiet now,
realistically.
actually quiet, not the tense silence of those last
The
few
prison
weeks with
debts,
Jane
I'm
and the
pretty
girls.
sure it's just extra
I'm still in
cells.
college working toward my law
It
degree.
kinda is just worth it
Mom's
for me
car
to
sits
go
in the garage,
regardless.
polished and maintained just the
Plus
way
I have
she
the
liked
option
it.
of going to the
I worry
ossuary,
about Dad
which is nice.
sometimes. I know he still has his allowance, and if he's careful with it, he'll be comfortable. But I also know Jane's taste for expensive restaurants hasn't changed, and I've heard through mutual friends about their weekend trips and shopping sprees. That's his choice, though. We all make our own decisions and live with the consequences.